Foundations cracked. The autumn rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Rivera and Associates. But Marcus Rivera barely noticed. His fingers traced the edges of the blueprint spread across his mahogany desk, the lines of his latest skyscraper. Design blurring as exhaustion weighed heavy on his shoulders. At 34, he had built one of the most respected architectural firms on the West Coast. Yet tonight, success felt as hollow as the concrete shells of his unfinished buildings. Another late-night boss. Penny, his assistant, peered through the doorway, her coat already buttoned against the storm outside. It's past 9. Even the cleaning crew left an hour ago. Marcus managed a tired smile. It's just finishing up the Morrison project revisions. You go ahead, Jen. Get home to that family of yours. She hesitated at the threshold. You know, Marcus, when's the last time you actually went home before midnight? Or took a weekend off? Or had dinner with someone who wasn't a client? The question hung in the air like morning fog over the bay. Coos knew the answer, though he'd never admit it aloud. 5 years, 2 months, and 16 days ago. The last time he'd shared a meal with someone who mattered was with Sophia, at that little cafe near the university where she'd been finishing her medical degree, where everything had fallen apart because of his stubborn pride. I'm fine, Jenny. Really, architecture doesn't sleep, and neither do architects who want to stay on top. After she left, Marcus walked to the window overlooking the city he'd helped shape. His buildings punctuated the skyline like geometric monuments to his success. The Meridian Tower with its distinctive spiral crown. The Harbor Point Complex, that had won 3 international awards. The Pacific Gateway that had graced the cover of Architectural Digest. Each one represented countless hours, sleepless nights, and a relentless pursuit of perfection that had cost him everything that truly mattered. His phone buzzed against the desk. Caller ID made his blood run cold. Detective Rodriguez, SFPD, Economic Crimes Unit. Mr. Rivera, we need to talk. There's been a development in the Westfield Convention Center investigation. You come in tomorrow morning? Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. The Westfield project, his firm's biggest contract, $100 million. Civic Center, that was supposed to be his masterpiece. For months, whispers had circulated about cost overruns, substandard materials, and kickbacks to city officials. Marcus had dismissed them as rumors from jealous competitors. But now, double quotes. What kind of development? Marcus's voice barely rose above a whisper. The kind best discussed in person, sir. 9 a.m. tomorrow? And Mr. Rivera? You might want to bring your attorney. The line went dead, leaving Marcus alone with the sound of rain against glass and the sudden, crushing weight of understanding. His empire, built brick by brick over 15 years, was about to crumble. Worse still, he had no one to turn to, no shoulder to lean on, no voice to tell him everything would be okay. As he gathered his things to leave, Marcus caught his reflection in the darkened window. Face staring back looked older than his. 34 years, marked by stress lines and shadows that spoke of too many lonely dinners and too much pride. Somewhere in that reflection, he could almost see the younger man who had once believed in second chances, who had once held the hand of a brilliant medical student and dreamed of building a life together. That man had died the day Sophia walked away, leaving only this hollow shell behind. Part 2. When the scaffolding falls. The morning sun cast long shadows across the police station's interrogation room, but Marcus felt nothing but cold. Detective Rodriguez slid a thick manila folder across the scarred metal table, her expression grim but not unkind. Your business partner, David Westfield, has been embezzling funds from the Convention Center project for 18 months, she said without preamble. Cheap materials, inflated invoices, phantom subcontractors, the whole 9 yards. Marcus stared at the documents, bank records, forged receipts, email chains he'd never seen. His signature had been expertly forged on dozens of authorization forms. I had no idea. David handled all the financial we know, Rodriguez is. Interruption was surprisingly gentle. Westfield confessed yesterday, named you as an unwitting victim actually, said he kept you in the dark deliberately. Relief should have flooded through him, but Marcus only felt numb. So I'm clear? Legally? Yes. Professionally? She shrugged. That's another story. The project's dead, The city wants their money back, and your firm's name is all over the news. I'm sorry, Mr. Rivera. By noon, Marcus stood in his empty office watching movers cart away 15 years of his life in cardboard boxes. The Meridian Tower model, his drafting table. Even the coffee machine Jenny had bought him last. Christmas, all repossessed by creditors who'd moved faster than vultures on roadkill. 30 days, his lawyer had explained over the phone. How long before personal bankruptcy proceedings begin? Unless you can secure emergency funding, but given the publicity, the phones had been disconnected within hours. Clients canceled contracts via email, their language polite but final. 3 employees quit before lunch, unwilling to wait for severance checks that might never come. Jenny had stayed until the end, tears streaming down her face as she hugged him goodbye. This isn't your fault, she'd whispered. Don't you dare. Blame yourself for trusting the wrong person. But trust, Marcus had learned, was a luxury he could no longer afford. 2 weeks later, the headache started. Sharp stabbing pains behind his left eye that left him nauseated and dizzy. He ignored them at first, chalking it up to stress and too much instant coffee in his cramped studio apartment. All he could afford after selling his penthouse to pay legal fees, the dizzy spell that sent him tumbling down the subway stairs, changed everything. We need to run some tests, Dr. Patterson had said after examining the CT scan. There's a shadow on your temporal lobe that concerns me. Could be nothing. Could be. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Now Marcus sat. In the fluorescent-lit hallway of St. Mary's Hospital, a clipboard of insurance forms balanced on his knees. The pen trembled in his fingers as he tried to write his address. He'd been evicted yesterday, spending the night in his car, before admitting he needed medical attention more than pride around him. The hospital hummed with quiet efficiency. Nurses in colorful scrubs hurried past, their soft-soled shoes squeaking against polished linoleum. Families clustered in waiting areas, some crying, others laughing, all of them surrounded by people who cared. Marcus had never felt more alone. His phone, down to its last bar of battery, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the news about your company. Karma's a bitch. Trevor Morrison, his college roommate turned rival architect. Even his enemies were kicking him while he was down. Marcus Rivera. A nurse appeared beside him, chart in hand. Dr. Chen will see you now. Marcus's heart stopped. Chen, it couldn't be. There were thousands of doctors named Chen in California. But as he followed the nurse down the corridor, his legs felt weak with something more than illness. The nameplate outside room 314 confirmed his worst fear and secret hope. Dr. Sophia Chen, neurology. Marcus paused at the threshold, his hand frozen on the door handle. Through the glass, he could see her profile as she studied his chart, the same delicate curve of her neck. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating. The small scar on her chin from a childhood accident she'd told him about. During their third date, 5 years. 5 years of wondering what if, of seeing her face in strangers, of building walls so high that even he couldn't see over them anymore. The door opened before he could knock. Hello, Marcus? Her voice was exactly as he remembered, soft, professional, with just a hint of the warmth that had once made him believe in forever. But her eyes, those deep brown eyes that had once looked at him with such love, now held only careful concern and perhaps the faintest shadow of old pain. Unexpected reunion, the silence stretched between them like a bridge neither dared to cross. Sophia's white coat seemed to armor her against the past. Her stethoscope a barrier between the woman who had once traced patterns on his chest and the doctor who now needed to examine what might be killing him. Please have a seat, she said, gesturing to the examination table with practiced professionalism. Her voice carried no trace of the girl who used to laugh at his terrible jokes or steal bites of his dessert. I've reviewed your preliminary scans, and we need to discuss your symptoms. Marcus perched on the edge of the table, acutely aware of how the paper crinkled beneath him. Small world, he managed, attempting levity. San Francisco has only so many hospitals. Sophia pulled up his CT scan on the computer monitor, her fingers steady on the keyboard. Those same fingers had once intertwined with his during lazy Sunday mornings, had sketched architectural doodles in the margins of her medical textbooks. Tell me about the headaches. When did they start? 2 weeks ago. Maybe 3. Time had become fluid since his world collapsed. Sharp pains, mostly behind my left eye. Dizziness, nausea. She made notes on his chart, her expression neutral. Any vision changes? Difficulty with balance? Or coordination? Some. I fell down the subway stairs last Tuesday. For just a moment, her composure cracked. A flash of concern? Or was it something deeper? Crossed her features before the professional mask slipped back into place. Marcus, she said carefully, there's a mass on your temporal lobe. Small, about 2 centimeters, but given your symptoms... She turned the monitor toward him, pointing to a dark spot on the great white image of his brain. We need to determine if it's benign or malignant. I'm scheduling you for an MRI tomorrow, and depending on those results, possibly a biopsy. The words hit him like a physical blow. Brain tumor, cancer, death. The trilogy of terror that reduced his architectural empire to dust seemed laughably small compared to this. How long? The question escaped before he could stop it. We don't know anything yet, Sophia said firmly. Let's not build bridges to places we might never go. The phrase jolted him. It was something he used to say when she worried about her medical school exams, about whether she was smart enough, strong enough, good enough. She remembered. Dr. Chen Marcus began, then stopped. What was he supposed to call her? They were strangers now, bound only by patient confidentiality and the ghost of what they'd once meant to each other. Sophia, she corrected quietly. Given our ... history, should probably refer you to another neurologist, Dr. Martinez's. Excellent. And there wouldn't be any complications with no. The word came out sharper than he intended. Please, I don't have anyone else. The admission hung in the air like a confession. No family, no close friends, no support system, beyond an overdrawn bank account and a Honda Civic that doubled his current address. Sophia's eyes widened slightly, and he saw her taking in details she'd missed before. The wrinkled shirt he'd slept in. The shadow of stubble that spoke of forgotten routines. The hollow look of a man who'd lost more than just his business. What happened to you? She asked, her professional distance wavering. Same thing that always happens, Marcus said with bitter honesty. I chose pride over everything else that mattered. 5 years earlier, you don't trust me, Sophia had said, tears streaming down her face as she stood in the doorway of his old apartment. In her hand was a crumpled letter, the acceptance to her residency program at Johns Hopkins. It's not about trust, Marcus had replied, his voice cold with hurt and misunderstanding. It's about commitment, about choosing what matters most.
Ow.
This is my dream, Marcus. I've worked my entire life for this opportunity. And what about our dreams? About the life we planned together? He'd seen the acceptance letter weeks earlier, hidden in her textbook. Instead of talking to her about it, he'd let his insecurity and pride build walls. Found the courage to tell him about Baltimore, about the prestigious program that could launch her career. He'd already decided she was abandoning him. I'm not leaving you, she'd pleaded. We can make it work. Long distance. Visits. I'll be back in 3 years. 3 years, he'd repeated. 3 years of playing second fiddle to your career while I wait around like some lovesick puppy. Words had been designed to hurt, and they'd found their mark. Sophia's face had crumpled, and in that moment, Marcus had seen their entire future collapse. If that's really what you think of me, she'd whispered, then maybe you don't know me. At all. She'd left that night, and Marcus's pride had kept him from following, back in the present. Sophia was studying him with the intensity she'd once reserved for her medical textbooks. You never called, she said finally. You never came back. The admission was barely a whisper. After my first year, I came back for Christmas, hoping ... but you'd already moved. New apartment, new phone number. Jenny at your old firm said you didn't want to be disturbed. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him. You came back? I realized that night that I'd been afraid to tell you about Baltimore because I knew how you'd react. But I hoped that once you'd had time to think about it. She shook her head. It doesn't matter now, but it did matter. It mattered more than tumor or bankruptcy or any of the disasters that had brought him to this sterile room where the woman he'd loved and lost was trying to save his life. Sophia, he began, but she was already standing, her professional mask firmly back in place. The MRI is scheduled for 2 p.m. tomorrow. Don't eat or drink anything for 12 hours prior, Marcus. She paused at the door. We're going to figure this out. Whatever's happening in your brain, we'll deal with it. After she left, Marcus sat alone in the examination room, staring at the scan of his possibly dying brain. For the first time in 5 years, he wasn't thinking about buildings or blueprints or the empire he'd lost. He was thinking about second chances and whether some bridges could ever be rebuilt. Rebuilding from ruins, the MRI machine sounded like a construction site, hammering, drilling, mechanical symphony Marcus knew by heart but had never experienced from the inside. He lay perfectly still, eyes closed, trying not to think about the magnetic field mapping the potential destroyer in his skull. When it was over, Sophia met him in the consultation room with a cautious smile that made his heart skip in ways that had nothing to do with medical anxiety. Good news, she said, settling into the chair across from him. It's a benign meningioma. Slow-growing, non-cancerous, and completely treatable. Relief crashed over him like a wave. So I'm not dying? Not today. Her smile widened, revealing the dimple he'd once kissed 1,000 times. We can monitor it for now. Many people live their entire lives with these tumors without symptoms. The headaches are likely stress-related, which, given everything you've been through, makes perfect sense. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling lighter than he had in months. Thank you, for everything. I know this situation is, complicated. Sophia was quiet for a moment, studying her hands. Where are you staying, Marcus? The question caught him off guard. I'm between places right now. That's not an answer. Heat crept up his neck. My car, the Honda, in the parking garage. Level 3. Spot 247 if you're keeping track. Her sharp intake of breath cut through his attempt at humor. You're homeless. Temporarily displaced, he corrected. It's not ideal, but it's not permanent. This is San Francisco in December. You'll freeze. I've got a sleeping bag, and the hospital cafeteria has decent coffee. Sophia stood abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the city they'd once explored together. This is insane. Can't live in your car. It's just until I figure things out. Maybe get a job at another firm. Save up for an apartment. What firm is going to hire you right now? The words came out harsher than she'd intended, and she immediately softened. I'm sorry, that was cruel, but accurate. Marcus managed a rueful laugh. David Westfield made sure my name is toxic in this industry, at least for now. When Sophia turned back to him, her expression was resolved in a way that made him nervous. I have a guest room. Sophia, no. I can't. You can, and you will. Her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to life and death decisions. As your doctor, I'm concerned about your stress levels. Living in your car isn't helping your recovery. And as the woman whose heart I broke 5 years ago, the question hung between them like a challenge. Sophia met his gaze directly, and for a moment, he saw past the professional facade to the vulnerability beneath. As that woman, she said carefully, I'm wondering if maybe we were both too young and too proud to fight for what mattered. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in Sophia's kitchen, stirring pasta sauce while she finished her evening rounds via phone consultation. Her townhouse in Noah Valley was everything he'd imagined she might choose. Warm hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves lined with medical texts and novels, photographs from her travels during residency. Living with her had been awkward at first, tiptoeing around shared spaces and carefully maintained boundaries. But gradually, they'd fallen into a routine that felt almost domestic. She'd leave coffee ready before her early shifts. I'd have dinner waiting when she came home exhausted from 12-hour days. Dr. Martinez can handle the Morrison case, Sophia was saying into her phone. Yes, I'm sure. Transfer him to neurosurgery in the morning. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, pulling pins from her hair with practiced efficiency. Sorry about that emergency consultation? How was your day? Marcus asked, ladling sauce over the linguine. Long yours? Productive, actually. He set 2 plates on her small dining table. I had 3 interviews today. Sophia paused in opening a bottle. Of wine? Really? That's wonderful. Don't get too excited. 2 were with firms that basically wanted to hire me for my notoriety. It's the architect who survived the Westfield scandal. The third, the third community center in Oakland. Nonprofit work designing affordable housing and public spaces. The pay is terrible, and I'd be starting over from scratch, but. Marcus met her eyes across the table, that I'd be building things that actually matter to people's lives, instead of monuments to corporate egos. Something shifted in Sophia's expression. Pride, maybe. Or recognition of the man she'd once fallen in love with beneath all his ambitious posturing. That sounds like you, she said softly. The real you. They ate in comfortable silence until Sophia spoke again. Marcus, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you call me? In those first months after I left, before you changed your number and disappeared, I kept hoping. Marcus set down his fork, the question he'd dreaded finally arriving. Because I was terrified you were succeeding without me. Because every day that passed made me more convinced that you were better off, that I'd been holding you back. You were never holding me back, wasn't I? He pushed food around his plate. About it, Sophia? You got into Johns Hopkins, one of the best programs in the country. Became chief resident, published papers, saved lives. What would have happened if you'd stayed for me? We'll never know, will we? I know. You would have taken the local residency, the one that wasn't quite as prestigious, the one that wouldn't have pushed you to be everything you became. And eventually, you would have resented me for it. Sophia was quiet for so long that Marcus began to wonder if he'd said too much. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Do you know what the worst part was? Not that you didn't trust my commitment to us. Not even that you thought I would choose my career over love. The worst part was that you made that choice for me. You decided what I could and couldn't handle, what was best for my future, without ever asking. What I wanted, the truth of it hit him like a physical blow. You're right. I was so afraid of being abandoned that I pushed you away first. And I was so afraid of conflict that I didn't fight hard enough to stay. They looked at each other across the small table, to people who had loved deeply and failed spectacularly, who were somehow finding their way back to each other through honesty instead of pride. Sophia Marcus began, then stopped. I know I have no right to ask this, and I know the timing is all wrong, but she reached across the table and took his hand, her fingers warm against his palm. Ask anyway, she said. Do you think we could try again? Not the way we were before, but as the people we've become. I can't promise you stability or success or anything except that. I'll never again make decisions for us without talking to you. First, Sophia's thumb traced across his knuckles, the gesture so familiar it made his chest ache with longing. I think she said slowly that some foundations are worth rebuilding. New blueprints, 6 months later. Marcus stood before the Oakland City Planning Commission, his presentation boards arranged behind him like soldiers in formation. The community center design was modest compared to his previous skyscrapers. No glass towers reaching toward heaven. No architectural flourishes that would grace magazine covers. Instead, he'd created something revolutionary in its simplicity, a building that belonged to its neighborhood. The Fruitvale Community Center will serve as more than just a gathering space, he explained to the commission members, his voice steady. With quiet confidence, the design incorporates affordable housing units on the upper floors, a community kitchen for local food programs, flexible spaces that can adapt to the neighborhood's changing needs. Commissioner Martinez leaned forward. Mr. Rivera, given your firm's recent difficulties, how can we be assured this project won't face similar problems? A year ago, the question would have stung. Now Marcus smiled, because I learned that the foundation of any successful project isn't just concrete and steel, it's trust, transparency, and accountability. Every aspect of this project will be open book, with community oversight at every stage. The vote was unanimous. Approved. Outside City Hall, Sophia waited by the fountain, her hair catching the late afternoon sunlight. She'd taken the day off. To be here, something the old Sophia, the one who'd prioritized work above all else, never would have done. "So," she asked, though his grin had already given away the answer. "We're building a community center," he said, pulling her into his arms and spinning her around until she laughed, the same bright, unguarded laugh that had first made him fall. "In love with her in that dusty lecture hall so many years ago? I'm so proud of you," she whispered against his ear as he set her down. They walked through downtown Oakland hand in hand, past murals that told stories of resilience and renewal, past small businesses that had weathered their own storms and survived. Marcus squeezed Sophia's fingers, marveling at how different this felt from their first relationship. Less desperate, more grounded. They'd both been broken in different ways, and somehow the cracks had allowed light to seep in. "I have something to tell you," Sophia said as they stopped at their favorite cafe, not the trendy spot near the university where they'd once dreamed impossible dreams, but a small place run by a Salvadoran family whose daughter Sophia had treated for seizures last year. Good something or bad something? Good. Very good. She pulled an envelope from her purse, her hands trembling slightly. "I got the fellowship." Marcus stared at the letterhead. Stanford University Medical Center. Pediatric Neurosurgery Fellowship. The most competitive program on the West Coast, the kind of opportunity that came once in a lifetime. "Sophia, that's incredible." He meant it, even as his heart began to race with familiar panic. "When do you start? That's the thing," she bit. Her lip, a gesture he remembered from their college days. "It's in Palo Alto. An hour commute on good days, 2 hours in traffic. It would mean longer hours, more time away from home from us." Marcus saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear that had driven their first relationship into the ground. But this time, instead of letting pride and insecurity speak for him, he took her hands in both of his. "Take it," he said without hesitation. "Marcus, take it," he repeated firmly. "This is your dream, Sophia. The one you've been working toward since medical school. And this time, I'm not going to let my fears cost us both something irreplaceable." Tears sprang to her eyes. "But what about us? What about us?" He cupped her face gently, brushing away tears with his thumbs. "You think I'm going anywhere? You think a little traffic and some long hours are going to scare me off after everything we've been through?" The old me was an idiot," Marcus interrupted. "The old me thought love meant possession, that commitment meant limitation. But I've learned something in the past year, living with you. Watching you save lives while I figured out how to rebuild my own. Love isn't about keeping someone in a box where you feel safe. It's about giving them wings and trusting they'll choose to come home to you." Sophia's smile was radiant through her tears. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. "Besides, someone's got to keep you fed while you're changing the world, one tiny brain at a time." 1 year later, the Fruitvale Community Center buzzed with activity as Marcus walked through the finished building. In the main hall, a quinceañera celebration spilled over with music and laughter. Upstairs, residents of the affordable housing units hung laundry on small balconies, while their children played in the rooftop garden he'd designed. The community kitchen hosted cooking classes that filled the building with the sense of a dozen different cultures. It wasn't the architectural masterpiece that would win awards or grace magazine covers. It was something better, a building that had become the heart of its neighborhood, proof that the best foundations were built on community rather than ego. "The contractor says we're under budget and ahead of schedule," Jenny reported, appearing at his elbow with her ever-present clipboard. She'd joined his new firm, Rivera Community Design, as soon as he'd gotten the nonprofit funding. "Mrs. Rodriguez wants to know if we can add more planters to the children's play area." "Tell her yes," Marcus said, watching a group of teenagers practice dance moves in the main hall. "Whatever the community needs." His phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Surgery went perfectly. Little girl will be dancing again within months. Coming home to you tonight. Love you," Marcus smiled, typing back. "Can't wait to hear everything. Making dinner. Love you too." Home. The word still filled him with wonder. Not the penthouse he'd lost, or the car he'd slept in during his darkest days, but the life he and Sophia had built together in her townhouse, now their townhouse, a life where her fellowship schedule and his community projects created